sermon is grace upon grace. And I believe that's what we see Paul realizing here in this passage from Ephesians chapter 3. Paul understood from the very beginning how he was unqualified to be the person to share the mystery of the gospel to others. Since up to the moment that he met Jesus on the Damascus Road, I mean, he was responsible for the death of many Christians. That was his life mission up to that point, which was to ultimately destroy the church. And so this is why he said in verse 7, of this gospel I was made a minister according to the gift of God's grace. The gift of God's grace, which was given to me by the working of his power. That's why I love the words of Eugene Peterson on how he describes that by saying that it just came to me as a sheer gift to me, a real surprise. Like, I was the least qualified of any of the available Christians. And when all this was, happening, I think Paul would have felt that way because there was other disciples alive at the time of Paul, right? There was Peter, there was James, there was John. They were part of the original 11. They were still living when Paul met Jesus on the Damascus Road, and they had the opportunity to receive the Great Commission on top of this Mount of Galilee. They were not opposed to Jesus in any way, but instead they were followers from the very beginning. They looked much more qualified than Paul did. And so I think it would have been easy for Paul to say to himself, like, those other followers are much more qualified than me. They're much more qualified to share the gospel than me. And yet, for reasons I don't understand, I'm your chosen instrument. Now, I think that should all give us encouragement this morning, because I believe there's many of us, either here in this room or maybe watching online, that we feel unqualified for the ministry that God has given us, the involvement in the church that God has asked for us to do. Like, for example, some of us might be quick to say things like, man, I don't know the Bible that great. I'm not a super Christian like some people. I don't have talent to share the Bible with anyone. I'm too young. I'm too old. I believe there's many people who feel that way when it comes to being a part of the church. They think to themselves, like, how can I be used to advance the gospel because I have no idea, about this mystery. In fact, it really is a mystery. That's why I come to listen to the pastor to tell me what this mystery is. Well, I'm glad you're thinking that way, because I want to speak directly into those feelings. I want to speak directly into the feeling of being unqualified, because Paul shares here, the goal is not to be the super Christian. The goal is not to be the best teacher in the room. The goal is what Paul points out here. And if you look really closely in your Bible in verse 8, Paul describes what he believes the purpose in receiving this grace upon grace was for him. And he says in verse 8, he says, to me, though I am the very least of all the saints, this grace was given to preach to the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ, and number 2, to bring to light for everyone what is the plan of this mystery.